excited today. Our very own Bree Ray, communication specialist extraordinaire and influencer, is going to introduce our guest, Amy Rees Anderson, and talk about her journey. So let's have you guys come up to the stage. Bring them on with a nice big welcome. Good job.
Thank you. Okay. With us today, ladies and gentlemen, we have Amy Rees Anderson. For most of Amy's entrepreneurial journey, she was a single mom. She started her own business in the healthcare tech industry and eventually sold it for $400 million. Now, as a founder of the angel investment firm REES Capital, Amy focuses on helping entrepreneurs make a difference by providing the education and guidance needed to build a successful business. And she recently released a new book with Forbes called What Awesome Looks Like: How to Excel in Business and Life. So give it up for Amy Rees Anderson. Are we on?
Okay, yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Sir, can you guys hear it?
She on? Perfect. Okay, Amy, how did you get started in the space that you're in?
Oh gosh, well, I started as an entrepreneur at 23 years old as a way to put food on the table for my kids, basically, and started a healthcare technology company because that's what I had worked in high school and in college, and it just took off from there. So went through and did several different healthcare technology companies, and then I sold the last company in 2012, and that's when I decided it was time to start angel investing and just try to give back, take all the lessons I've learned. Is it not working? It is not very well. Check. Is this better? Okay. Sorry. And so at that point, I decided it was time to take all the lessons I'd learned and everything being an entrepreneur, you learn quite a bit actually along the way, most of it the hard way, and decided I would give back by helping other entrepreneurs to be able to be successful. And so that's how I started doing the angel investing after I sold. And that's where REES Capital came in.
Okay, and so tell us about the early days of REES Capital.
Oh gosh, well, we started it in 2012. Like I said, I had just sold MetaConnect Global, the healthcare technology. It was a health information exchange company that did a lot of data analytics in healthcare. And, it was funny. Everyone's like, oh, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? Because I was transitioning my time out after I sold it. And there's that moment where you've been an entrepreneur for so long, and it becomes like a disease. You don't know how to not do something. I know you know, right? And so like the next morning, my first day after the last day, I was up at like 6:30 going, and my husband's like, what are you doing? At this point, I'd been remarried. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, what else would I do? So we started REES Capital, and myself and my CFO and COO came together and just started looking at deals together and trying to help invest in entrepreneurs, really. So that's kind of how that got going.
Amazing. And so what kind of companies is REES Capital looking to invest in?
We invest mostly in technology companies. We really focus on companies where we feel like that we can do more than just money. So, the money part's the easy part. It's the help and wanting to invest in things that we feel like our experience can contribute. So even though we were a healthcare technology-focused firm, it was really a technology firm. So we feel like that's an area we have a lot to give back in, and we spent most of our time in those types of areas.
Okay, so going from the medical industry, and now you're in angel investing, you clearly have a lot of entrepreneurial years and experience. What were some of the most challenging obstacles that you faced during those years?
I think as an entrepreneur, your biggest challenge is yourself, right? It's overcoming the fear that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you don't know enough, who's going to believe in you. It's all those things. My ideas are dumb. It's kind of going through that whole kind of overcoming the monsters in your own head, I think, is a big part of it. And it's also the kind of, paralysis by analysis where you want to have everything perfect before you start. And so I think a lot of times it's the getting going on things. I got some really advice from my grandfather who said, get up, do something, do anything, just make a start.
I love
and
that.
It was just really powerful for me because it was like, he's like, just start and things are going to change. Like the perfect plan is not going to end up where you thought it would by any means. Nothing I did ended up where I thought it was going to go, but the important part was to start down the track and then to let life take you because it's not going to even get you there if you haven't moved.
Right. So what advice would you then give to entrepreneurs to kind of overcome those monsters in our heads, yes?
I think the best way to overcome your fear is to do it, right? To do the thing that scares you. And the more you do it, the less scary it becomes. Early on, I read that book, Who Moved My Cheese. If you guys haven't read it, it's such a, I have ADD. It's got big print and pictures. Love that book. But it kind of talks about these mice having to go down this dark maze. And when they'd go down a hall that was dark, it was no longer scary after they'd been down it once, right? Now they kind of knew that one, and the next one didn't seem quite as scary. And I think that's really how life is too. It's like just try things and overcome that fear that failing is the worst thing ever, because it was the mistakes that actually pushed me to where I needed to be, right? It was the times that it seemed like everything was falling to pieces that I would end up doing something I wouldn't have ever done if I was comfortable. That's for dang sure, right? I probably never would have started a company if I was comfortable. I mean, who'd be crazy enough to do that, right? So I just think it's doing the thing that scares you and overcoming that kind of hang up that if I try this, I don't want to look stupid, or I'm worried that people are going to think I'm a failure. Who cares? Like, that is not the point. The point is you're going to learn something that makes you better, therefore you didn't fail.
Mm-hmm. Would you mind elaborating on some of those times that felt really scary and everything was falling apart, and what did you learn? What did that feel like for you?
Yeah, I think one of the most impactful moments, I actually talked about a little bit about it in the book, is I bootstrapped my first company, so we would literally make a sale, get the cash from the sale, spend, and grow the company that way. And I'm really glad I did, because I learned some incredibly valuable lessons doing it that way. But at one point, we had negotiated. We were just, initially my company was reselling software someone else developed. And then as the years went on, we became bigger and bigger reseller. And I didn't like the way they were developing the software. So we made a proposal to say, let us take over the development for you. You can still own it. We'll just create it for you, pay us a little bit to develop. And we negotiated this whole deal and went ahead and hired the developers, getting ready to go sign the contract. And the day before I was supposed to fly out to California to sign it, we found out that the company that we were doing this with had just gotten taken over by the FBI because they had done something dishonest on their end in a merger that they had done, and nobody was going to be signing any contracts. But here I had like all these developers I'd hired and no cash in the bank to pay. I mean, we'd been a profitable company to that point, but I didn't have money to hire a whole team of development people. And we as a company sat around together, and I was like, guys, what are we going to do? And one of the employees, it got quiet, and he's like, well, there's always failure. And everybody just kind of started to laugh, because we're like, yeah, I guess that is. So worst thing is we fail, right? And that moment was really pivotal for me, because I was like, okay, we can all go work at McDonald's if necessary. Love McDonald's, by the way. No shame. Love the Happy Meal. It's my favorite thing in the universe. we eat McDonald's everywhere. When my kids and I travel around the world, you will literally see pictures of us posted at a Mickey D's in every single country. Love it. Okay, so McDonald's should give me a bonus for that. But really it was this concept of, well, there's always failure. And so it caused us to I literally got on my computer. Now, for you that are starting companies out, and I didn't know what EBITDA was. I was a company doing like $3 million in revenue at that point and like a 38% EBITDA margin, but I didn't know what the term EBITDA was. Okay, I had dropped out of college to put a husband through at the time, had 2 little kids, didn't finish, didn't take the class, right? And here I was running a business. And so for me, I didn't know how to write a business plan. I had no idea. I didn't know how to raise money, but I did. I literally got on Googled how do you raise money, and it said write a business plan. I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. So I Googled that, and it said, here's a software you can download for $80 that'll help you write it. I was like, $80 is a lot of money, right? So that's how I did my first business plan, and then I didn't know who to send it to. So I Googled, and it said send it to venture capitalists. No idea what those were. This is all legitimately how it went down. And so it ended up sending it out, and we raised $2 million. I remember the VC came to meet with me, and he's like, well, when do you need the money? And I was like, oh, by payroll, like next Friday. His face was like, is she crazy? But, they gave us the money, so I guess it worked out. But I just think so many of the things, you're going to figure it out as you go, and it's going to be okay. And if it's not okay, that seemed like the worst moment of our life, right? Mm-hmm. When that deal fell apart, because we'd worked so hard to negotiate that deal. We were so excited. And having that fall apart is what led us to then, on our own, instead of selling someone else's software, develop the first web-based software for medical, which was a huge deal and obviously got a ton of attention. And so it was all those things, I wouldn't have gotten out of the comfort zone. I would have kept going with my little profitable entity and not taken the risk, but I was forced to. So look at those hard moments as a blessing. Those are the blessings that are going to push you.
I love that. Those are the moments that are going to push you. There's obviously a lot of partnerships. You were in it with a group of people when you were talking about, well, there's always failure, right? What advice do you have for us about partnerships in life, in business, with investors? What advice do you have for that?
So partner with people smarter than you, okay? That is everyone's like, oh, that you see so many people that try to hire beneath them. No. Hire above you. You're still in charge. That makes you actually better because you hired smarter than you, right? You just surround yourself with a lot of really smart people that are people that you want to be like, and that will actually elevate you to a level that is so much higher. So don't be afraid of, I have to be the smartest person in the room. No, you don't. That's if you are, that's a problem, just for the record. And find like integrity. To me, integrity is everything. If you see somebody do something dishonest in other areas of their life, they will do something dishonest to you in business. There is not this partition. Oh, that's my friend. They would never do that to me. Yes, they will. Because you can't segment, right? And so we had a thing on our board that we would put up that said, do what's right, on the whiteboard at my office. And we added to it, let the consequence follow, because we found that so many times when we were saying we're going to do the right thing, you can literally redefine the right thing so easily and trick yourself. You could be like, oh, you talked about, the sales process, right? We're going to bid against this other vendor, and we know they're going to lie on their bid. They're going to embellish their numbers. So we actually have to embellish ours because we can't let them win. We're going to do the wrong thing for the right reason to stop them from being dishonest. I mean, you can play these weird, random, and you can convince yourself that it's okay. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't do that. So we put let the consequence follow, and we all agreed up front, if things go wrong because we did the right thing, like if we lose the deal because they lied and we didn't, we're okay with that. Because success is going to come and go, but your integrity is forever. And we all were okay with that. And it really helped become a guiding light for how everybody behaved in the business. And it ended up, interestingly enough, was the thing that made us the most financially successful, was the reputation we had of integrity that helped us when it came to investors, when it came to landing new customers and all those things. It was that reputation of doing the right thing, even if we were going to lose.
And when you're talking to investors, I remember hearing you speak about the Bentley analogy. Can you talk a little bit more about the Bentley analogy?
Yes. So, okay, I got remarried 12 years ago. My husband, when I sold the company as a surprise for me, he bought me a Bentley for my birthday because he's like a really good man. So it's a beautiful Bentley convertible. But anyway, I would never have bought it for myself. I'm a terrible driver, and I would never trust myself with that car. But I use the Bentley analogy because if somebody wants to get money, right? If my kids come to me, let's say that you're trying to raise money for your company. Well, if my kids come to me and they say, hey, Mom, we want to use your Bentley. Okay, and they say, oh, it's going to be fine, no problem, I got this. I'm never giving them the keys, right? Because I'm instantly like, you're an idiot and you have no idea how expensive it is, how dangerous it is. Right? But if my kids came to me and said, hey, Mom, we want to use the Bentley, and listen, I know it's an expensive car. And I know that not only do I have to be a good driver, but there's like a ton of other really good, bad drivers out there that I have to watch for and be careful of. Like all of a sudden, I'm probably still not going to give them the keys, but my likelihood of giving them the keys is so much higher, right? And the point of that is when you come in to raise money for your company, and you come in and you're like, oh, I got this, where no one else can do what we do. There's no threat, we're the best. You lose all credibility. But when you come in and you're aware, these are the issues, these are the risks with my company. Yeah, there's nothing I can patent on this, but you know what? What we do is make sure that we're staying aware that means we're going to have to be faster than other people and be more nimble and do more social media, whatever it is. And we know that that's still a risk, right? All of a sudden, my trust in you goes up tremendously because you don't have to know it all. And I already know you don't know it all. Every investor knows you don't know it all, right? I mean, they got into the position they're in because they didn't know it all and made a lot of mistakes. So it's okay to not know everything, and it's okay to not come off like you're the smartest or the best or that you have it all figured out. And frankly, it's going to do more to get investors to want to put money in your company if they feel like you are willing to learn, you're teachable, that they can actually impart wisdom to you, that you're going to listen to that and learn from their mistakes. And that makes you more credible. So that's what the Bentley analogy is. It's about just, don't be afraid to acknowledge the risks and the fears and the concerns. It's actually a positive.
And to be honest and to continue to have integrity, which is one of your core values. Yes. Going back to having partners, and as your team is starting to grow and you're hiring and you're making new partnerships and working with investors, what are some of the values and the qualities that you look for in those people that you're bringing into your circle?
You can have totally different upbringings, backgrounds, all those things, but what you need is similar values. Okay, you need similar values. You need people that are, and you can teach somebody a skill, but it's hard to teach an adult a value in business. You don't actually have time for that when you're running your company. So you need to find people that already have those values. And, we originally would go out and try to hire the people that were the best at this with their resume, with the most beautiful resume. And what we found was a lot of times that did not equate to being one of the best people of values. So we kind of changed our whole mantra in the company and started to actually advertise that we were looking for people with these values, hard work, integrity, going the extra mile, things like that. And if you had those values, we would teach you the skill. And we had to get pretty creative in how we went about getting people to understand what we were trying to do there. But as they came in, And we had a mink farmer who he was a guy that had worked on a mink farm his whole life. He'd never had a professional job, one of the best sales guys we ever had because he knew how to work, right? We had a guy that had been a welder that during his interview, he's like, I just want someone to give me a chance in a corporate office. I've been a welder my whole life. That guy went on to be running a customer service team. Like it was the values they had of knowing how to work hard. So don't get yourself hung up on, that they have this specialized degree or this whatever. It's about, do they know how to work and do they care about people and are they going to have integrity in what they do? And if you hire those kind of people, you can teach them anything.
You've met a lot of people in your life, obviously. You've lived all over the country. So why Utah? Why did you choose Utah to found REES Capital?
Yeah, so I grew up in Oregon, Washington, Michigan, Virginia, Tennessee, Texas, California, and then came to Utah. My dad was in the FBI. Go to those that serve. But when I came out to go to BYU. I'd grown up as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I wanted to come out to BYU. And so I was 17 when I came out here. Wow. And got married right away, like by 19, had a kid by 20. It's a whole Utah thing, it's like a thing. And then I got divorced real quick, and I had these 2 little kids. And so I stayed in Utah. I think Utah, of all the places I've lived, and like I said, I've lived all over the country, and there's great things about everywhere, but Utah is one of the most hands down beautiful places I have ever in my life lived. And the people here are so nice. I mean, really, you guys, it's so funny. I was in New Zealand. My husband and I were out there for something, and we had gone to New Zealand and came to Australia on the way back, and they were launching, what's it called, Zoolander 2 or whatever, and you had Ben Stiller was there, and they asked us if we wanted to come to the taping, and he's like, they're asking the audience where we were from, and we said, Utah. Oh my gosh, you are the nicest people in Utah. Like, we're known throughout the world for Utah being really nice people, right? And so the people here are nice, and it's got such a great atmosphere here in Utah for entrepreneurship. Like the kind of the drive, the entrepreneurial spirit here in Utah is so unique to anywhere else I've lived. And for me, Utah, like there's nowhere else I'd want to live. I'd love to travel to other places, but I love Utah.
Love to keep Utah as home.
Yeah.
I love that. So you started your entrepreneurial journey as a mom. Motherhood is stressful in and of itself.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So how did you manage the stress of entrepreneurship on top of that?
Yeah, you don't. So, no, look, I think, and for the women that are mothers and working, that it's a special kind of stress that it's hard to relate to unless you've been there. I think one of the things I learned is that not everything matters, right? If I didn't have doilies for my lesson on a Sunday, it didn't matter, right? Or if I didn't bake my bread and I bought it, I'm still going to go to heaven. So I literally had to get to the point where I would separate what matters really, like, and it's everybody's got their own higher power they believe in. I believe in God, and I have my own set of, faith beliefs. And for me, it's all about trying to get to heaven, right, to the celestial kingdom. And if I want to get there, what will keep me out of there? Like, as long as it's not something that keeps me out of there, it doesn't matter. So if my house happens to be dirty one day because I was playing with my kids, I'm still going to go to heaven, pretty sure. So I just learned how to separate what matters and what doesn't in a way that was super helpful for me, mostly just to keep me sane, because I could have like stressed myself out that, for Thanksgiving, we used Chinette platters. So much better than using like real dishes you got to wash, you know what I'm saying? And I don't care. And I live in this incredibly beautiful home that I built, and I'm literally serving on my Italian wood tables, Chinette paper plates, and if people don't like it, then you probably shouldn't eat at my house. So I just have learned that that's just not what matters in life.
Yeah.
I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I think being a mom is the most incredible thing I've ever done. It is the thing I'm the most proud of. I've won 1 million awards in business, and none of them compare to having my kids be good people and thank me for how I raised them and stuff. And so I think you have to just refocus on what matters if you're going to try to balance it all. But women are amazing multitaskers. I think it's a God-given gift that was given to us so we could keep the children alive. If you've ever had your husband babysit, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, I say babysit because that's what they call it when they watch their own kids, but you know what I'm saying. They're like, oh, they're alive still. I want to star. We're like, okay, alive, laundry, lunch, dinner, whatever. So I don't know. I think we have special gifts as women, and I don't think we should ever discount that. That's actually a very huge value in the business world.
I love that. Obviously, there's a lot of talk in the tech industry right now about women in tech.
Yeah.
And what can you say to the difficulty of being a female entrepreneur?
It's funny. When it comes to tech, I didn't know women weren't in tech back then. I was so young. I was 23 years old, and I was raised with parents that acted like you could do whatever you wanted. There was no difference because I was a boy or girl or whatever.
Same.
And I remember going down to Comdex in Vegas for the first time You guys know what that is, the big tech show they do down there. And I'm walking through the room, and I'm like, I'm the only girl that's not a hired booth. They called them booth babes back then. They'd totally get sued for that now. But back then, they would refer to them as booth babes. There's hired women in the booths, and I'm like, am I the only one who's a business owner woman in this? I just didn't know women weren't in tech. So I think that was good for me because it didn't scare me, because I was like, oh, I belong here too. I think we need more women in tech. I think part of the reason we don't have them in tech is because women think it's a bunch of sweaty guys who don't shower watching Star Trek in the back room, which, there's some reason for stereotypes, but women need to be, we need to do a better job at our universities and our high school level of explaining the creative jobs that exist in technology.
Yeah.
My specialty was actually designing software. And you said it doesn't matter where the button goes. I disagree. Where that button goes is everything. And that's why women are actually really good at user interface design, because the men are thinking, does the function work? And the woman is thinking, how was the experience for them when they clicked that button, right?
Yes.
And so if I could get more girls to know that, yeah, it's true. And so, like, if I could get more girls to know that there's those creative jobs that are not boring, sitting there typing code all day, not interacting. They're really like meeting with customers, understanding their needs and what works for them, and why the flow of clicking this versus that. We could have so many more girls in tech, and we really need them there. I think when it comes to business and leadership for women, my biggest advice, and it was an interesting experience. My COO is also a woman, super like me. We're just like, we just do anything. We're not scared of that stuff. And we were doing these interviews, and we would have women come in to interview that would be like, we were noticing there's a lot of women that when they would come in, we would be nervous to hire them. And we started to talk, why are we nervous? Well, these women would come in and say, I just want you to know, I have a special needs child Thursdays. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to leave and go take care of my child. And we're sitting there like, wow, if you're scared of that, I don't know you, but I'm going to be scared of it. And then we were like, she and I were talking, and we're like, and if we're scared of it, think how the men feel, because they're already scared of women, period. Like, they're terrified of us. They have no idea how we work, how we think, can't relate. True or not true, man? Yes,
True.
You can say it. I'm not going to sue you. It's true. And so I'm thinking, if I, as a woman who understands the needs of here I am, a single mom running a company, and I understand those needs, but she's apologizing. And the fact that she's apologizing makes me think there's something more wrong to the story than I know. So the men must be like, holy cow, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
And so I really feel like women, see, the difference is if that same woman had come in and said, hey, I've got a special needs child on Thursday that I've got to take care of, it will not be a problem. My work will get done. I just wanted to make you aware of it. I'm going to be like, okay, cool. You got this. I just want to know that you got this. Right? And so it's the way that women a lot of times approach it that makes everyone afraid. And it's just, it's one of those things women have got to not apologize. Like, like I said, we're multitaskers. We can do everything. And so just don't make it an apology, and then you won't put people off. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. I love that. And I think I've heard you say a few other things, like women don't wait. Don't wait for recognition.
Yeah, okay. So this is the thing. See, how many guys in here are married? Raise your hand. Yeah, okay. So, like your wife won't tell you it's her birthday. She just wants you to remember, because then she'll know that you love her more. And she's not going to tell you what to get her because she just wants you. Yeah. Okay, we as women need to stop doing that. Like, we're so stupid. Like, that's just one of the things. I do it too, right? But we do it in business. So, like, at home, I'm like, I'm not going to ask him if I look pretty. I want him to tell me. It's going to mean so much more if he tells me without me asking. Right? I do that. And that's just the dumbest thing, because, like, he's a guy, right? If you cut your hair, say, I cut my hair, do you like it? In business, women are the same way. They're like, I'm not going to ask for a raise. I just want to do such a good job that my boss will notice and they'll give me a raise, because that's going to mean it's for real, right? We do that. And it's like, don't do it at home, don't do it at work. Like, the men aren't afraid to come in and say, I've done a really good job, here's what I've done, give me a raise. I firmly believe the women, a big part of, not all of it, but a big part of the disparity in pay is because the men are asking and the women are hoping you're going to notice and just reward them. And it's a big issue.
Big issue. Okay, so as women, what we can do to help ourselves in the entrepreneurial world: don't wait. If we want it, ask for it, and stop apologizing.
Yes, please.
So what can the men do to also help welcome us into this industry?
I think the men I feel for the men. Okay, right now, if I was a guy, I'd be like, the whole hashtag Me Too thing has gone so far that if I was a guy, I would be scared to death to talk to a woman in business. It's like, I think it's almost gone so far. It's having the reverse effect on helping the women.
Right.
I think the men have to stop being afraid and come at it from a place where if you need to talk about something uncomfortable, for example, if your employee gets pregnant and is going to have a baby, most of the men don't say anything, most of the women don't ask if there's a way to have a flex schedule, and then they lose the really talented women in their organization, right? Don't be afraid to sit down and say, hey, I understand you're going to have a baby. This is uncomfortable for me to ask because I don't want to be offensive, but I also want to know as a boss, what can I do to support you? What are the things you're worried about? Start the conversation if you're worried about it by just admitting, I'm really nervous about how to have this conversation or how to word this because, I want to try to help you, but I also don't want to offend you. It's okay to start it that way because you're instantly going to bring her walls down, and the women have to do a better job of not getting so mad every time the men, bless their hearts, might say something not so bright. Sometimes they're going to do that. I think 99% of the time it's not intentional. Most of the men that have said something offensive, it was just in ignorance. They didn't even realize. And we as women need to do a better job of saying, I know you didn't mean to hurt my feelings that way, but the truth is when you say that, it's actually could really hurt those feelings because they're not going to get better if we don't explain to them why it was hurtful. They're not trying to be.
Right. Yeah. Preach, yes. Okay, I want to switch tracks just a little bit and talk a little bit about raising money. What advice would you give to startups when it comes to raising money and acquiring capital?
Well, remember the Bentley analogy, right? The other thing I would say is don't raise money before you need to, and don't raise more than you need to. And the reason I say that, I feel like one of the reasons I was so careful with my businesses is because I had bootstrapped that first one, right? So I only spent what I had, and so I became very cognizant of money and spending the money, and I was so careful with every dollar, and that served me so well for being able to get such a huge exit in the end. And I think that I get scared today because I see the trend is everybody's kind of, they look at the bragging rights as I raised this much money at this big of a valuation. That's not the bragging rights. That's I could tell you you're worth $1 billion. It's really a percentage. I'm coming up with a calculation for a percentage, right? To be able to say I'm going to get this percent of your company, and it doesn't matter what I say. I could say $5 billion. It doesn't matter. The real value of your company is what you exit for and how much did you own and your employees own did, the payout you got. And so I think it's a mistake to be raising huge amounts of money up front because you think that's validation. I mean, I use it as my Christian Louboutin example. I used to be happy with Payless shoes until I got my first pair of Christian Louboutins. If you don't know what it is, the red bottom. If you're ever in trouble with your wife, it's a really good way to get out of trouble. But once you have your first pair, now all of a sudden, my little Payless shoes weren't good enough. They were fine before, but now I had to have the red bottom shoes. It became not just a want, but a need. And then it became a bigger need. And I think that's what happens with money. If you raise a lot of money, you're going to spend it, and your needs are going to skyrocket to fill the money you just raised, right? And then you see people doing things that I take exception with, where they're spending investors' money to throw huge, elaborate parties and all this kind of stuff, where they're just bleeding money on these massive buildings when they're not even making a profit yet. And I get scared because to me that is not how I was raised. That was not the principles that I was raised with. And I take every dollar I took from someone as a moral obligation on my part to make sure they got their dollar back, and not to be going and doing crazy stuff with that money until they had been paid back and we could afford to do it. And what I do with my money at that point is totally up to me. Yeah. But I think there's a trend that right now scares me, and we need to refocus people on just your needs will expand with the money you raise, and you can do so much creatively with so few dollars when you have to, right? It's amazing the difference.
So don't be flashy, be smart.
Yeah, not until you can afford to be, and then go ahead and flash all you want. I have no problem with that.
If you can afford it, the flash is good. Okay. What surprises or lucky breaks were there along the way?
It's funny. I've always considered myself a pretty lucky person. So no matter what's happening in my life, if I sat down on an airplane, I'd be like, well, see, I'm a lucky person, so this obviously means something that you're next to me. We're going to have a chat, and I'm going to figure out why you're next to me, because, it's a blessing for me that you're here. And I think because I looked at everything in life that way, even the things that went wrong, especially after learning that first experience, I'd be like, oh, this went wrong. Something awesome is going to happen now. And so it really, I had so many lucky breaks because I saw everything as a lucky break, if that makes sense, both good and bad.
I love that.
I had a marriage go bad early on, and it's a lucky break because now I got an awesome husband. It's like, you never know, right? The bad things are going to turn into the good. So if you consider yourself a lucky person, I think you generate your own good fortune in life. And I was constantly meeting people and And the networking thing was hard for me because I was really insecure back then. I was young. I was a college dropout. I was a girl. Everybody else was men in their suits, and I just felt so, I don't know, I felt like I was down here and they were all up here.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the older you get, you realize, oh, you're actually way smarter than you thought you were. You know what I mean? You start to go, I wasn't that dumb. But I think that going into situations for networking, and I would sit back in the back and not talk to people. And one of the luckiest breaks I had was somebody at an event like that. It was one of the technology events they had in Utah. They came up to me and said, hi, how are you doing? And shook my hand. And I literally wanted to give them the biggest hug because I'm like, thank you for talking to me. Like I don't know, something they did for me. And as I drove home that day, I thought, if they made me feel that good saying hi, I wonder how many other people in the room are feeling how I did, that if I went and said hi to them, it would change everything. And so I made it a goal that I would go in and say hi to people and talk to them. And that was a lucky break because I met so many incredible people. And I never had somebody that I said, can you give me advice? Say no. I never had somebody that said, can you tell me something you went through that might help me? Say no. And I think it's amazing. People that have succeeded are excited to give back with what they've learned, and they want to help you. So just be not afraid to ask.
So talking about giving back, you also have founded a charity called IPOP. Will you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I started the IPOP Foundation. It stands for In Pursuit of Perfection, because I got tired of everybody acting like you had to be perfect, because I'm pretty sure what God said is just to keep pursuing it, and that's good enough, right? So
right.
I was like, I liked thinking about it in pursuit of perfection. So I started the IPOP Foundation as a way to encourage young people to look at entrepreneurship as a way to become self-reliant. Like I said, as a single mom that was a college dropout, the fact that I could go on to do what I did and provide the lifestyle that I could for my family was pretty remarkable, and I could never have done that because I didn't fit in a box. I wasn't, an accountant or a lawyer or whatever, a doctor, but I was an entrepreneur, and that's really no box, which I loved. And so I really think it helped me learn a lot of self-confidence and self-esteem, and I think that I want that for young people, so that's what we do, is a lot to promote those things.
I love that. Okay, we're going to open it up, lucky break. We're opening it up for some audience questions. If you have a question, raise your hand. We have some mic runners running around, so we'll hand you a mic just so our people on live stream can hear the questions. Woohoo.
Hi, I'm Robin. I broke my jaw, which is why I look and sound like this.
Thanks for being here.
So I wanted to ask you a question because you were saying that you usually invest in technology-focused companies. As a female entrepreneur, there's an article that my friend Sarah and I talk about all the time called Zebras versus Unicorns, right? And so in the article, it was saying that they look at, let's say, journalism or education or lifestyle-oriented businesses or brands as really under invested in, right? And a lot of the times, those are the businesses that women are building, right? I'm building one right now. So how can we kind of open up the VC world to look at these businesses that women are building as potential investments, at realizing that it's not going to maybe be $1 billion business, but that there's longevity, there's profitability. I mean, we know the stats in terms of women, the ROI on the businesses that they run and own. So I'd love to get your perspective on what can we do that we can actually make access to capital for women easier?
So I think the first thing is you have to recognize in a venture capital firm what they exist for, right? As a company what you exist for in a venture capital firm. The VC firms are other people's money being managed by partners who sometimes have their own money in the mix as well, right? And those people have a job, just like a CEO has a job to have profitability, they have a job to get a return for their investors within a certain time frame, right? And the issue you have with some of the lifestyle businesses is the return that they're going to get because they have to look at, I have $1 here, can I invest it in this company or this company? Their job as a VC fund is to make sure they pick the one that will give the biggest return for their investors. So it's a very different kind of mindset they have to go about, which is why you typically don't see as many of them going into the lifestyle, because they could make more money by taking the same dollar somewhere else. I think angel investors have played a huge role, because the difference with the angel and the venture capitalist is the venture capitalists are investing other people's money, angels are investing their own. So like we don't have a fund, it's our own money that we invest. So we tend to maybe look at things that it could be that we have a longer life cycle of what we're going to invest. Now you're starting to see some more venture capital funds that are also related to charities, program-related investments, where they can actually put it in from a charitable cause but still to make a return. And I think you're going to see many more of those crop up just to support women in business. But what I often tell the women is a lot of the women, even though they're thinking about it from a lifestyle, because that's their comfort level, is there's technology games to be played with what they're doing that actually could make a ton of money, right? We were a healthcare technology firm that was doing things with medical records, but we turned into a data analytics firm that made a ton of money off the data that we were actually collecting and analyzing. A lot of those lifestyle companies could actually be data companies because they're gathering important data, connections, they're tracking things on people, and that data becomes valuable to sell. And I think a lot of time the women businesses haven't thought through that side of it because they're thinking about the people side of it. And I think it's good for them to start to look at some of those avenues if they want the traditional venture capital, because it's not the VC's fault. They have a boss, right? They have a boss they have to please and numbers they have to hit. So it's more about trying to figure out how do we capitalize on the skills that the women have and the ideas they have and marry them up with the technology in such a way that they are more scalable. Because most of the ones that aren't are going to be more like a lifestyle business where you're doing it just to be able to support your family. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I have a sister-in-law that has moccasins she sells on Etsy, and she makes enough money that she can go shop whenever she wants, right? And she loves that. It's just for her, that's exactly what it was for. So it all depends on what your end goal is. And just understanding I've often thought in college it'd be awesome to have entrepreneurs also have to take a venture capital class and venture capitalists take an entrepreneur class, because understanding the other person's, what they're being accountable to, helps your knowledge as you go into it.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Sarah Scott. So we went to this investor, the term unicorn, we went to a panel discussion earlier this year, and I asked the same question, what about mentorship? And all these people on this panel were amazing, and they said, we don't have mentors. It's just our peers. So I would love to get your thought on mentorship and how that's helped your career and how you define it.
Oh my gosh, mentors are so important. When I was so blessed. When I was like 24 or 5 years old, I had, do you guys know Fraser Bullock? And Tim Layton, they're Sorensen Capital, those guys started mentoring me when I was I knew nothing. Like I said, remember I didn't know EBITDA? Those guys sat down with me and helped build the first financial model for my company back then. I didn't even know what a financial model was. They're like sitting there saying they're going to project the future. I'm like, that's impossible. You can't project the future. How would you possibly be able to? And they taught me how to build financial models. Now I'm like the biggest financial model psychotic guru in the universe because of that. But I was like, in my 20s, and they sat down with me and taught me that. I had a friend that actually was the one that was a business mentor that said, I was about 27 at the time, and they said, has anyone ever told you have ADD? And I said, no, but my brain jumps around a lot. And they said, you might want to consider going to get on meds for that. And I was like, this is someone I respect who's telling me they take meds for it. Maybe I should go get on meds for it. So I did, and it changed my universe because it didn't take away the smarts. It just helped me finish what I started in a much more effective way. And so mentors like that did things like that for me in my life, that was life-changing things that helped me so much. And so I really am a huge fan of having mentors. I think who you pick as a mentor, make sure it's somebody that you want to be like they are because they're living their life in a way that you're proud of that. Because you can also have bad mentors. They're going to lead you down the wrong path. And so really step back and go, not just are they successful in business, but are they the kind of person that I want to be when I grow up, kind of a thing.
Amy, I have a comment and then a couple of questions. I've followed your career. I've watched some of your YouTube presentations. I'm fascinated by it for what you're doing for women, and I think you're awesome.
Thank you.
I agree. I brought my oldest daughter here today. And I wondered if you brought any extra books, because I'd like to give her a gift of your book.
Yeah, I think I actually might have a couple in the car. So
You have one right here if you want.
Yes.
I'd like to purchase that for my daughter. How do you create a culture where people are fiercely loyal and they just can't wait to wake up and come to work in the morning?
It's an awesome question. And it took me many years to figure that out. Just so you know, as we were growing from a small company to when we sold, we had about 2,000 employees worldwide. And I think it was for me, and part of that is because I'm a woman too, and we like emotionally, we're like, we don't want anyone's feelings hurt ever. So we're always like worried about that, you know? So I used to know everybody in my company. And as we grew, I would get in the elevator and people would be like, hi, Amy. And I'd be like, I don't even know who that is. And then I'd feel bad and I'd feel guilty about that. And then as we grew bigger and bigger, I started to find that the culture would have these like things that would crop up that, you know, you'd have gossip and rumor mill. And I'm like, they would say, oh, Amy thinks this. And it was not at all what I thought. And I'm like, well, how did it get there? Like, how did this happen, right? And the culture started to become negative. And I, you know, stress about anxiety. And finally I was like, I gotta start making sure that I'm saying for myself who I am and what I believe. Because if I don't, other people are gonna say it for me and it probably won't be what I think. And I realized it was my fault. It wasn't their fault for gossiping. It was my fault because I was creating an atmosphere where they would gossip because they didn't have the data, right? So my job, my responsibility to communicate as the leader. And if I would do that, then they were to gossip. That's now you can hold them accountable. But I wasn't doing my part. So I started doing a daily blog to my employees, where we had like an intranet homepage. We just developed a cheap little landing page, and everyone started their day on the landing page. And every morning, 5 days a week, I would post this little blog to my employees. And it wasn't like a professional blog. Like, here's what's happening in HIPAA today in healthcare and the High-Tech Act. No, because no one cares, right? It was like, hey, you know, I screwed up today. I made this mistake, and here's something I learned from it. And super raw, super real, super just authentic and practical. And it was so interesting because in my early years, the truth is when I was a young CEO, I tried to act like I knew it all, and I was, you know, I've got this down. I'm the smartest person in the room, and that's when I had all my failures happening. And as soon as I got kicked down enough, it was like, okay, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I don't know everything, and man, I could use your help. Everything changed for me. People all of a sudden wanted to help me succeed. Because we all have friends who are know-it-all. Do you ever want to give them advice? No, because they know everything, right? So you wouldn't tell them even if you had good advice. But as soon as I became not a know-it-all, and as soon as I became the person that was like I'm the CEO, but that doesn't mean I know everything. It just means I have a big responsibility on my shoulders. And I don't know if my choice is the right choice. I think this is what we should do, but could I get your thoughts on that? As soon as I started to get real, and it was just being very open and vulnerable, which is super scary, to do. It's you feel exposed, right? As soon as I started to do that, all of a sudden, all of my employees were like, I want to help you succeed. And they were putting in extra effort. They were giving me feedback. They were telling me what I needed to do to be better. We had this bond that it was like, by the time I sold that company, it was brutal. Not because, I was super excited about the exit, but they were my people. They were like my friends. They were my family. You know what I mean? I had these employees that I become close to, even the ones that we had offices over in India, people that I had never even sat down with one-on-one. I felt like I knew them and they felt like they knew me because I was communicating every single day in a very real way to them. And it was really interesting when I sold the company. The employees were like, well, are you going to still write your blog? And I said, you don't need to read it because I'm not your boss. And they're like, no, we love learning from you. And so I've continued that blog. It's actually been now just over 9 years, 5 days a week, every single week. I've never missed a day. And it's, my husband's like, do you have to write your blog? I'm like, yes. It's because I think, one, I needed them to trust that they could rely on hearing from me every day. And it helped me so much because the more real and authentic and vulnerable I became, the more confident you just feel in who you are, if that makes sense. And it's not that I'm the best or the smartest. I've had amazing successes, but not because of anything I did, but because the people around me lifted me to a level I couldn't have gotten to myself because I needed them, and they knew I needed them because I was telling them I needed them. And it makes people want to rally. So I think it feels counterintuitive. It feels counter to anyone in leadership, right? I think for men it's especially hard at times because they kind of feel like everyone's looking to them to be the protector and all those things. But the more you can just admit you don't know everything, the more you can admit you need help and how you need help, the more you can be quick to say, I messed up. And here's what I learned from it. Because there's no shame in the fact that you made a mistake, right? We all make mistakes. The shame is when you don't handle it right. It's when you don't own it and when you don't be accountable for it. And the more you make excuses, the more your credibility goes down. But when you just say, you know what, I messed up, I'm sorry. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it, and here's how I'm going to make sure I don't make that mistake again. People rally for you. And coolest experience ever. We had just, we were just right in the process of selling the company. I had gone back to Boston to meet with the buyers. We were in a meeting, and another guy that had also had his company acquired in our same building, interestingly enough, in Utah, he was in the meeting with me, and he leans over and he says, the power's out in our building back in South Jordan. We had this big, huge, 5-story building full of people. And he's like, the power's out. And see, in our company, that was critical because we were doing medical data exchange, and if something went down, like an hour down put us behind a week. It was a huge disaster. And my phone hadn't rang once, no text message. And I'm like, okay, now I'm freaking out. I step out into the hallway, and I call my CIO, and I'm like, what's happening? And he's like, oh, it's fine. We got it covered. The power's out. But employees actually ran home, got power cords. We've strung them out into the hallway, and we're all out in the main lobby where we can see in the light getting our work done, so don't worry about it. I wasn't even in town when when the cat's away, might as well play kind of thing. No, they had my back because they cared about helping me succeed because they knew that I needed them. So I think that's how you build that culture. It's not to go in there and be like, I'm the man, I'm so cool, I'm the boss, I know it all. It's not. It's to be like, hey, I'm a real person who makes mistakes. And you know what? When I put my pants on right out of the dryer, it hurts my self-esteem. Right? It's just you got to just be real about all of it. And that's what makes you lovable, I think. That's what endears people to you, is that you're just real. I actually remember being in a church class. As a single divorced mom in Utah, you don't really fit the mold when you're a CEO of a tech company. And I remember sitting in the back row of the Sunday class. We have this Relief Society class for my church, and I'm sitting in the back row, and the lady got up to teach, and she's like, my husband and I were on a cruise ship and had to keep me off the tables because I have a serious gambling addiction. And I was sitting in the back row of the class, and I'm like, I wanted to give her the biggest hug. I'm like, I love you for just being real, because all of a sudden I could be real too, that, I'm not a gambling addict, but, I drink a lot of Diet Coke. All day, every day. It's probably not healthy for me. I should probably quit. It just made you feel like you don't need to feel bad about yourself. And the more of us that do that, it gives more of us permission. That's why I'm so open about taking ADD meds, right? I take meds. Okay, no shame in that. Because I want other people that have ADD to go get on meds because it's going to help them. I don't want to feel stupid or less than, because I'm not, right? And I think if more of us get real, it creates a better atmosphere to help each other succeed.
I love that. One more. Yeah?
I can just ask. I was just wondering first.
Yeah. Do you want Okay, we'll do two
I
more.
can repeat the question if you
We'll
want me
do two more. We'll do, yeah.
You gotta wait for the mic.
Yeah, will you wait 1 second?
So
There we go.
I guess I'll go first. Love you, love your story. We had a question about men versus women entrepreneurs. As an angel investor, do you have an age that you're looking for? Because obviously I'm a little older than maybe some of the people looking to raise money for a company.
Look, I think age is actually a benefit in many ways because it equals wisdom most of the time. Not always, but you would hope that it has taught some life experience and wisdom. So I don't think the age is what really matters. I don't think that someone's too young or too old. It's really who the person is. It's all about the person. It's not even about their business idea. If I'm honest with you, if someone's a good person, we get excited to get behind them because you can take a great business idea and put a bad person, they're gonna wreck that good business idea. But you can take a bad business idea with a good person, they're gonna figure it out. So it really comes down to the person. That's what we're investing in, not the idea.
I was just wondering since you're talking about ADD and then finishing what you start.
Yeah.
And I feel like for a lot of entrepreneurs and me including, you just have so many ideas and companies and even people that want you to work with them. Yeah. But I guess how do you decide what to focus on, and do you give yourself a time frame, or is it just the opportunity, or I don't know if you have anything on.
I think you have to start with the goal of the end in mind a little bit, right? I'm a big fan of goal posters. If you have not made one, please make one. If you ever hear me speak at normal universities, you're going to hear me talk about the goal poster. There's something that happens when you can visualize what you're trying to accomplish. Even more powerful than writing a goal down is finding a picture, mocking up a picture, whatever you got to do. Once you kind of have a picture of what you're trying to accomplish, making the decisions on what to focus on becomes so much easier, right? And for our sales guys, we used to have a little sign on their cube that said, is what I'm doing right now leading to sale? It's kind of asking yourself, once you know the goal poster, saying, is doing this going to lead me to this goal? And if it's not, well, then maybe you might be doing the wrong thing in that moment. And it is hard because I'm also one who believes in staying open to the opportunities that come around you, because you just never know what interesting things are going to happen. But I think when you know the end result, it's easier not to get sidetracked. That doesn't mean you don't stay open to hearing things and learning about it, because that's always going to make you smarter. But you've got to start with the end in mind if you're going to get there. And so seriously, go home, make a visual goal poster. Someday if you see all my goal posters and what they've done for my life, I'm like, people that make fun of them, and I thought they were hokey too, but then I made one and everything happened, and I made another one, it all happened, another one, it all happened. So I'm like a huge goal poster believer now, and I've had people all over the world send me their goal posters, and the stories that they send. I had one guy in New York actually make fun of I wrote in Forbes, I was writing for Forbes and Huffington Post, and one of the guys I wrote on goal posters, and he sent me his poster and said, I made this just to make fun of you because I think it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So I'm going to make this, and I just sent it to you. A year later, and I have the email still, he wrote a huge apology and said, everything I put on that poster kind of to mock you has come true. Here's my next poster. And he had on that next poster that he wanted to win the Cannes Film Festival, and 4 months later he did. And I've had stories like that from all over the world. People have sent me their posters and followed up with the stories of what's happened in their life. And there's something crazy, crazy powerful about that power to visualize and what it does for you. And it's not even that you have to stare at it every day, but once you can visualize it, it just naturally comes about. So you make that, and then you ask yourself every day, is what I'm spending time on right now leading to that goal?
Yeah. Last question that we ask all of our founders that come to review: what is something fun that your success has allowed you to do?
Gosh, I think, well, it's I'd love to say I'm not as busy now as I was when I had my company. I think I'm actually 10 times more busy even now, if that's possible, but it's doing things I love to do and I choose to do. So there's a special kind of joy that comes from that. Having the time when I sold and Forbes approached me and asked me if they saw my blog and asked if I would start writing for them, and I was able to write for them. And then when they launched their book division, they approached me and asked me if I'd write a book, and it wasn't something I'd ever thought I'd want to do. But I realized, if I've learned all this stuff that was really hard for me, wouldn't it be better if I could tell people? Because I tend to be really quick and to the point. I don't fill it with a lot of fluffy stuff, and I can't read books where there's a lot of fluff. So my son calls this my ADD guide to success, because every chapter is like 3 pages. You could on each topic. It's like the quick and dirty, not the whole, like, let me tell you the whole dynamic story. It's like, here's what you do. Like,
I love that.
But I think being able to take the hard things, because I went through a lot of hard things, right? I went through an abusive marriage and single momhood and all the running a company and having companies fail and then companies succeed, and just all the things I went through in my life. I learned so much, right? And I'm like, okay, I could have gone through all that and just I learned from it and got to succeed from it, or I could take those things and share them with other people so that they can actually jump ahead of where I started and avoid the pitfalls it took me a lot of lessons to learn the culture and how to build a culture the right way and how to be vulnerable. It took a lot of painful things to get there. So if I can just tell you up front, do it that way, and you can start there, man, think how crazy. So that was really fun to be able to. It wasn't fun to actually write the book, but it was fun to be able to have a book out that you're like, even if no one reads it, my grandbabies will know who I was someday. I think that's been a joy. And then just being able to work with so many young people. I serve on the board at Utah State University and BYU and the U of U and UVU, and do a lot for the different universities to help encourage the young people. That they are somebody, that they're so much better than they think they are, that their life is meant to be this amazing masterpiece, and that they shouldn't be afraid to try things because they're going to accomplish. Like, I couldn't even balance a checkbook at 17. I bounced so many checks. Zion's bank president had to fly my dad out because I was underage and they couldn't put me in jail for it. Because I thought if you had checks in the checkbook that you therefore, look, I would write it out. They'd give me stuff at the mall. I'm like, this is awesome, right? But it's like, I didn't know. That's how dumb I was. I didn't know. But look, a girl that could do that could sell a company for almost $400 million years later. Clearly, these kids are capable than more than they think they are, because I certainly was. And it's like that message of letting them know and helping them understand. Sometimes we go in and we want to just tell the kids, like, I'm so great because of this, and that's not going to help them, because that's not where they're stemming from. Yeah. They're stemming from that girl I was. It's like, I can't even balance a checkbook, and when the bank sends me those statements, I just keep them sealed in an envelope because I don't even know what they're for. Right? By the way, Zion's bank president Scott Anderson and I are best friends now, so we're all good. All good. I've made up for it in droves. But it's just, it's helping. I think we need to do more to help our young people realize they belong. Our young women need more people to tell them, not just from other women, but from the men. It's really interesting. I was meeting with a group of young women at Utah Valley University the other day, and these girls that were like really dedicated to their education, I said, what is it that inspired you to finish? And in every case, surprisingly, it was a father or a strong brother or a strong man in their life, which I expected it would be their moms. And it was like interesting for me to realize we need the men to encourage their daughters. So glad that you brought your daughter with you. And I think that that's something that my dad, when I think back, my mom's an amazing woman. She's had 10 kids that were like out of control. We're all like totally like me, independent, and she's going straight to heaven. Like, I don't care what she does in her life. She's brilliant. But when I think about what gave me the confidence, it was my dad. Because he would always say when something went wrong, instead of like my mom would always be like, oh, I'm so sorry, honey, right? Let me help you fix it. My dad was like, you got this. You'll figure it out. And that expression of confidence in me did everything for me. So I think that all of us need to give back more to our young people and help them realize it, because we have a trend right now where these young people think when something goes wrong, it's the end. And the suicide rates are off the charts, right? These kids have given up hope. And I think we can all do so much to tell them it's not the end. You know, I had a poster on my wall that said, I'll be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. And like that saved my life many a time, right? So we need to do more to help them realize that they're more than they think they are. And don't think just because they come from a successful family that therefore they have that confidence. Sometimes it has the reverse effect. Yep. The kids that come from the most successful families often feel like, I'll never live up to my parents. So it's important that we don't prejudge these kids. We don't discount any of the kids. We don't think someone's not smart enough, or, oh, they're for sure going to be a success. They're okay. None of them are. They all need confidence, encouragement, and examples, and they need people like you guys to go out and tell them, these are the hardships I went through, and yeah, I've screwed up, I failed. You're still really good. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? That's
yes.
So that's for me, the biggest joy I have is that. The time I spend doing that is by far the most fulfilling.
Well, I love
Besides
that.
my grandbabies, who are awesome. Oh my gosh, love it. Grandparenthood is like the best thing ever, just for the record. I have two.
I love it. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being with us today. We do have a gift for you.
So, Amy, we want to present this canvas bag, some really fun Rev Road goodies and things so you can remember your time here at Rev Road. And it was so fun to have you here. Let's give her one more hand. Stand up. Oh, this is fantastic. So good to have you here. Thank you so much. As I was thinking, what are some of the takeaways I got from the presentation? Amy, there were so many. The integrity element, the finding good people that are amazing was awesome. And then just own your mistakes. What great advice. So